because of the unfortunate incident which occurred here during the visit of Ambassador Stevenson, people everywhere in the world will be hypercritical of our behavior. Nothing must occur that is disrespectful or degrading to the President of the United States. He is entitled to the highest respect of all of our citizens. And the law enforcement agencies in this area are going to do everything within their power to ensure that no untoward accident or incident occurs. We will take immediate action if any suspicious conduct is observed, and we also urge all good citizens to be alert for such conduct.
And here we go.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. This is episode number 277, Overt and Covert, Files and Follies. And the voice you just heard was the voice of Chief of Police Jesse Curry and his plea to the citizens of Dallas before the president's arrival. I'm sure he wishes he could probably take a couple of those words back about the whole accidents and incidents thing, because they didn't really fare too well there. Yeah, but we'll get into it, I promise. So before we do, I just want to welcome my co-host Joe.
Good evening,
Joey
everyone.
Scars Borelli. Joey Sideswipe Borelli.
Why Sideswipe? Oh, okay, got it. Scooters, Sky. Sideswipe. Yes,
He was in a little bit of a fender bender today, but thankfully he is alive and well and unscathed, relatively.
Oh yeah. Oh no scars to report. But thank you everyone for joining us on this Friday evening. Hopefully it is warmer where you are than about freezing where I am up in the Northeast. So.
All right, so Joe, before we get started today, let's say hello to all of our friends out here. We want to thank John for his super chat. He can't join us tonight, but he's here in spirit.
Thank you, John.
Colleen is in the house. Southwest is in the house.
Colleen, Southwest, hello.
Mr. Paul is in the house. Bungled is in the house.
Bungled.
Ev is in the house.
Ev.
And Ev is cold. And gosh darn it. Thank you, Paul. You are the man. Earl, Robert, and Smoking Joe. That's right. Smoking Joe Frazier. Hopefully Joe hasn't been smoking this evening and can coherently put some sentences together for everyone. Colleen said it is wretched in Oregon, Joe.
What is the temperature in Fahrenheit in Oregon where you are?
And I would like to know what it is in Celsius, Colleen, please. Yeah, we're getting a little rain here, Joe. It's a little rainy and cold, and but hey, I'm inside, so it doesn't faze me. I can just hear it tippering on the window back there.
And I like your JFK picture.
You like that?
I love it.
Yeah. That's him smoking a big fat blunt or cigar, whatever you want to call it. I think he was known to partake there every once in a while with his side boo.
Booze.
Yeah,
multiple.
Or booze plural.
Plural.
Yeah. So I came across some interesting stuff, Joe, about Jesse Curry. So I wanted to dive into him a little bit more because I realized that I really don't know too much about the man himself. You know, he's often, I mean, he had a rough time there, man. I mean, you lose the president of the United States in your city, right? And then you let the suspect of the killer of the president in your city get shot in the basement of your building. I mean, it doesn't get any rougher than that, does it?
Doesn't. No, not really. It's not something you want to brag about in your memoirs. In your autobiography, yeah.
Well, thankfully he didn't write one. But he did write a book about the JFK assassination files that he had. And there were some quite interesting things that showed up in that book that nobody had ever seen before. And that book may or may not have been added to our secret book depository over on Locals. If you would like to access it and get a key to get in the building over there, feel free to run over there and become a supporter and check out our TSBD. That's the secret book depository over at Locals. And I believe we should probably tell him this off the jump, Joe, since they can make some plans. Immediately after this show, Joe and I will be going over to Locals and doing a live stream. And it is going to be saucy, if you know what I'm saying, because somebody went and pissed me off again. And what I want to say, I can't say here, or else, it wouldn't be good. So we're going to, immediately after the show, we're going to go over to Locals and we are going to do a live stream over there. So please join us. You don't have to be a supporter over there. It's going to be free for everybody. So please come over and check it out if you're interested. If not, we get it. It's something new that we wanted to try over there. We have enough bandwidth right now to do like one live stream a month. So we figured we've been wanting to do a show where we just murdered and ripped apart the new documentary JFKX, and we're going to be doing that as well over there this evening, among other things. So check it out if you would like. I just wanted to throw that out there so everybody can plan their evening accordingly.
Yes, it should be fun, and it is definitely an experiment. It's going to be our first time trying this, so there's your advance warning that technical difficulties might occur.
They may ensue, and probably will.
But as usual, we will prevail.
As Borelli's law.
Yeah.
Oh, Colleen, is 37 degrees and atmospheric river. That doesn't sound good.
I saw that 37. Yeah, that's
I've heard of atmospheric pressure.
You have to keep in mind she's 3 hours. It's 4 o'clock there, right? It's not 7 o'clock like it is here on the East Coast.
This is true, Joe. I'm glad you paid attention in school and learned the time zones for the United States. That's very good. Have any of you guys seen the Richard Linklater film from the early 90s called Slacker? One of the characters is the JFK conspiracy freak. I have seen the movie, but it's been a very long time, and I don't remember that. But maybe it was Fred Litwin when he was a younger dude. I have to check it out. Yeah, I remember that. That was a pretty good movie probably back then, along the lines of Singles and some other good stuff back in the early grunge days.
Before my time.
Yes, Bungle, somebody is getting it. And yeah.
Who's that?
We'll just leave it there. Huh?
Who's that?
Who we're going to do the live stream about after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're going to get it, but better believe it. We're going to bring the heat.
He might know. Yeah, we didn't want to waste your time on JFKX because on YouTube, because we can't say a lot of it's so ridiculous. Like seriously, it's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever watched concerning the JFK assassination. And I've seen and heard a lot of dumb stuff, like just straight out stupid, dumb stuff, lies, you name it. But this one takes the cake. You're not going to want to miss it. All right, so let's get right into, hey, what's up, Jack? Jack is in the house. You're late. That's okay. We'll let you in. No late fee, brother. Juan's up in the house. What's up, Juan? Let's see. The only any other. Yeah.
a couple after the fact. They were definitely in cover your ass mode, shall we say. But we're going to get into it, I promise. Because Jesse Curry is a very interesting fellow. And, you think about who this dude was, and I can only imagine the kind of pressure that he was under that weekend. As soon as this thing happened, it was on. It was crazy. So I came across a very long article all about Jesse Curry by Robert Wilonsky. And this is from 1998. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I do have stuff highlighted, I promise. But he was able to interview Gene Curry, who was Jesse Curry's son, who provided a lot of insight about his dad and his past and how he came to be in that position in Dallas that day. So it's very interesting stuff. So we'll start off with stories would circulate later that when Chief Curry found out Ruby had gunned down Oswald in the basement of police headquarters, his headquarters, he broke down and cried and blamed himself and his men for the tragedy. In front of those reporters, he looked like a beaten man. And, if you go look up Jesse Curry on YouTube and watch some of his interviews after Oswald is killed, he does look freaking miserable.
Mm-hmm. And Rob, 1 second.
Yeah.
I just want to show, not every, did you show this? Not every DPD cop was corrupt. We are not saying that.
Yeah, no.
So we want to make that clear. We're a couple. Yeah, I think it's probable.
But there were some Judy Bakers on the police force, believe me.
Yeah. and there's a difference of being corrupt and making money after the fact, right?
And also covering up your deficiencies after the fact. Because they had some that weekend.
Exactly.
So not long after Oswald's assassination, Curry was hospitalized because of stress. And in 1966, he took an early retirement from the police force under doctor's orders. He would go to his death in 1980 insisting that he was a happy man, but one always haunted by the deaths of John Kennedy and Lee Harvey Oswald. So when I was talking about Gene, his son, Gene Curry, it says Gene never really kept any of his father's old letters or any other souvenirs related to Kennedy or Oswald, and he doesn't read assassination books. He only owns one video about the events of November 63, and that's a PBS series that features some footage of his father. He doesn't waste time reading books that deal in conspiracies, books that portray his father as the doddering local yokel police chief who let the crime of the century collapse beneath his feet. No. That is not what Gene does. He keeps a scrapbook. It's filled with photos of his father as a high school football hero, a pilot in the Army Air Corps, rookie cop, a plainclothes detective who looks as though he's just stepped off the silver screen. And this is the man that he chooses to remember as his father. So back in 98, Gary Mack said, nobody ever asked about Chief Curry. He says it's sad because nobody really cares about him. He's an important figure, but nobody seems to realize it. He's known as the police chief who let the president leave Dallas in a pine box, as the man who let Jack Ruby kill Oswald in his own building. And this is how most people remember Chief Curry. And according to James Hosty in his book, Assignment Oswald, Hosty says that Curry and the Dallas police were so ashamed of the Oswald murder on their watch that they decided to cover up the truth about how Ruby got into the basement. What do you think about that, Joe? That's coming from Hosty.
Hosty, another CYA #1 candidate. But
well, yeah.
You have to and it's kind of impossible to tell like what the relationship was between Posty and Curry, say, because he
Not good.
right, he worked for the DPD, but at the end of the day, the FBI and later Secret Service and other much bigger agencies were pulling rank. So you gotta take statements against each other, with with a little grain of salt, in my opinion. And we'll get into that later because there's some correlation to some of what we're both going to talk about.
Yeah. So when it comes to the FBI, Curry did make statements to reporters and possibly even on television news about the FBI not letting him know about Oswald. He said if he would have known about Oswald and any other troublemakers that were in Dallas at the time, that he would have been sitting on their laps. But the FBI failed to notify the Dallas police about Oswald and several other people. So
Secret Service too.
Yeah. A little bit about the man, Jesse Curry himself. He never wanted to be a cop. Not on his purview, not on his list. Didn't want to be, wasn't a little kid that said, when I grow up, I want to be a cop. No, that's not Jesse Curry. He was quite literally the son of a preacher man, right? He moved to Dallas with his family a few months after Jesse was born on October the 3rd, 1913. His father actually served as a police officer, but his tenure was very short-lived. He then entered the seminary and became an ordained Baptist minister, baby. For a while.
Yes, Methodist.
Yeah.
Methodist?
Baptist. I just
Okay.
just said Baptist.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I
For a
missed
while, young Jesse thought he wanted to go into his Uncle Roy's trucking business. Old Uncle Roy. He even dropped out of high school from Crozier Tech, who a lot of these Dallas-centric players went to work for him. He did this despite the fact that he was a football star and all-district tackle who led his team to the state finals. So dude was a beast on the field.
Wow.
And that was in
I wonder-
1933.
Oh, so that rules out him being Mac Wallace's teammate and on the football team?
Yeah, probably so.
Oh,
But he wrecked one of Roy's trucks, his son Gene said, and my uncle always gave Dad the worst jobs to encourage him to go back to school and discourage him from being a truck driver. And it worked. Okay? It was at Crozier Tech that Jesse met the woman who would eventually become his first wife and Gene's mother. After graduating from high school in 1933, Jesse briefly studied optometry, Joe. He could have been an eye doctor. An eye doctor. He then went into the dry cleaning business as a pants presser. Got a wrinkle in your pants? Jesse Curry can get it out for you.
Need your pants extended for Jumbo? Curry can do it for you.
Hey, just spread them. Let me get your inseam, Joe. It was a job he didn't much like, perhaps because he was not very good at it. He just couldn't press those pants clean enough. Doug Campbell would be highly disappointed. I would like everyone to know Doug Campbell is a noted proprietor and supporter of ironing his T-shirts, folks. That's right. You heard it here first.
Thank you, Colonel Reb, very much.
Whoa. Yes, thank you, sir.
And yes, he told me that, and I told him I respect that a lot, actually.
Yes, it's a very patient man who irons his T-shirts, I tell you, and boxer shorts and socks. But I digress. Okay. In the spring of 1936, he found out the Dallas police were hiring some temporary officers because of the 100th anniversary celebration of the Texas Centennial. Okay. So on May 1st, 1936, he joined the force as part of the so-called Texas, for which he drew a paycheck of $90 a month, Joe. Whopping $90 a month, which beat the hell out of the money he was making at the dry cleaners, though.
That's 900.
He was asked to stay on
today.
Huh?
That's 900 a month today. I mean, nothing to.
Well, that's kind of something to sneeze at. That's a little low for a police officer these days.
Oh, yeah. I thought you said it was a side check.
No.
Oh, that was his main check. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. He was asked to stay on with the force after the Centennial, though his son says that Jesse was not the kind of man who fantasized about wearing a gun and a badge. He joined the force to earn a living, and then he kind of grew into it. Jesse became, in the end, a career cop. Not long after Gene was born in 1937, Jesse was assigned to the motorcycle division, making a whopping $150 a month, Joe. He got a raise. And he got to ride a motorcycle, where he became known as something of a daredevil. In 1939, while answering a shooting call, Curry crashed his bike into the side of an escaping felon's car, breaking a finger on his left hand and damaging his spinal column. One family member says that Curry, lying in the street, unable to get up, bruised and bloodied, held his gun on the robbers until backup arrived. If you can picture that in your head.
Wow. I didn't know that.
You stay right there, boy. I'm telling you, don't move. I'll shoot you.
Let me guess.
I got one good finger.
He never rode a motorcycle again.
Oh, no.
He did?
Well, you just hold on. Don't get too far ahead of me there, Joseph.
We'll get there.
He did, however, start rolling in a car after this. Another time, he chased a bank robber to his second floor of a building and then jumped out the window to catch him, and he ended up breaking both of his ankles. I mean, that's rough, man.
He has worse luck than I do.
I mean, that'll put you in a wheelchair. Sure. I mean, you can't walk with you can't even crutch it with two broken ankles. You're screwed. Yeah, you got no mobility. I can see him now in like an old ass wooden wheelchair, all squeaky and squeaky.
Mm-hmm. I can't testify for the ankle breaking, but you probably don't know this. I did break my leg twice. Same leg. Once when I was 3, once when I was 6. So
here's my shocked face. On September the 9th, 1942, in the midst of World War II, Jesse Curry was granted a leave of absence from the force to join the Army Air Corps as an enlisted reserve, which Curry told the Warren Commission in 1964 was open to people who were over combat age to serve in the Air Force. But the Army disbanded the Air Corps less than a year after Curry joined, claiming it had too many pilots. Curry flew, and he loved it. In fact, but never got the chance to fly overseas, only getting as far as Meacham Field in Fort Worth. The Army offered the members of the Air Corps the chance to fight as foot soldiers or return to their previous jobs. Curry accepted the latter, and in July of 1943, he received his honorable discharge and returned to the Dallas Police Force.
Good decision.
Yeah.
And not going either the Pacific or Normandy.
Yeah. Watch out for that bomb. In August of 1945, 2 years later, Curry was sent by the force to the prestigious, Joe, Northwestern University Traffic Institute in Evanston, Illinois. This was a police college where the department's better men went to receive advanced training in traffic control and accident prevention. It was here that he realized his police job was no longer a temporary one. Curry then returned.
Oh,
Yeah. Traffic.
that can't mean that was the.
That's what it means. It actually means that. See, Joe, back in the day, cops used to really be involved in traffic and traffic control, because I think a lot of these, I don't think traffic lights were a big thing yet. And, signs were probably scarce, and a lot of, cops, come on.
Yeah.
Hey, a lot of that going on, I think.
Yeah. And they didn't even outlaw drinking and driving until like the 70s or 80s. And I saw like
no seatbelts.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone was pissed that they like stopped letting them do that. So yeah, can only imagine. Sorry.
That's all right. It was here that he realized his police job was no longer a temporary one. Curry returned to Dallas as an invaluable officer, somewhat educated in the ways of law enforcement. He also returned with a new boo, Joe, Bessie B. Wilhelm, who worked at the college and became the woman for whom he left his first wife. They just fell in love, says Gene, who admits he was devastated by his father's decision to divorce his mother. Then in 1946, Curry advanced to the rank of lieutenant. He assumed command. I'm sorry. I just had an image pop in my head from the movie Bad Lieutenant.
No, I was just laughing because it's like Getta Gumar, which is the Italian word for mistress.
Yes.
And then get promoted. Those were like back to back and divorce was very frowned upon back then.
And rare, yeah.
I mean, I don't know if Baptist wise, but I'm guessing it wasn't.
Yeah, Daddy probably wasn't happy, but let's see. He advanced to the rank of lieutenant, and then he assumed command of the motorcycle division, Joe, for less than a year. And then he also worked as a plainclothes detective in the Vice Squad. Gene recalls that he'd often go to work with his father, especially on the weekends when Jesse had custody of his son. Gene talks with great affection about the afternoons they spent together chasing bank robbers and bootleggers. He said, nowadays that wouldn't be allowed. Can you imagine? And Gene laughs. But if I wanted to see him and he was working, that's how it happened.
That's great.
So could you imagine toting your 10-year-old kid around chasing bank robbers and bootleggers? Hang on, boy. That's crazy.
It reminds me of a scene in The Wire, close to your area, where McNulty brought in Omar, and he's like, "Sorry, I have the kids tonight," and like the kids were like looking at each other like, "What's going on here?" And it's absolutely crazy. So, different times, Herd. Different times.
Yeah, definitely different times. In 1948, Jesse was promoted to captain and reassigned to the traffic division. Shortly after that, he was moved to the DPD's training school, and despite a degenerative back condition that caused him enormous pain, Curry continued in law enforcement, and in 1951 was sent to Washington to attend the FBI's National Academy, where he, in essence, learned how to become a leader, but not how to keep his mouth shut. No Dallas police officer had ever before been sent to both Northwestern and the FBI Academy. In what would prove years later a most ironic footnote, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover sent current Dallas Chief of Police Carl Hansen a personal note upon Curry's graduation from the FBI Academy on November 16, 1951, that concluded, "You may be assured that we were very pleased to have Captain Curry with us." 12 years later, however, Hoover would go out of his way to make sure Curry paid for the sin of allowing Lee Harvey Oswald to be murdered on his watch. But back to 1951, folks. Curry was promoted to inspector and assigned to head the department's training facilities. And just 2 years later, Hansen tapped him to become the assistant chief of police, Hansen's, quote, right-hand man. as city manager Elgin Krull would later refer to him. In 17 years, Curry had gone from being a part-timer in need of a paycheck to part of Hanson's inner circle. When Hanson stepped down as chief on January the 20th, 1960, after 15 years in the position, Curry was chosen as his successor. I don't know where I got threw an F in there, but good Lord.
My mouth is tied.
Yeah. Say nothing.
It's going to come back to
There's
bite
another
me.
t-shirt.
Something called karma.
Yeah. Curry grew more secure with his leadership role after September 6, 1961, when Dallas public schools were desegregated without a hint of violence. Indeed, things went so well, President Kennedy called Dallas a dramatic demonstration of law and order, prevailing, responsible, level-headed leadership, welding a whole community together to solve a difficult problem in race relations. In 1962, Jesse Curry and Glenn King, who served as Curry's administrative assistant and as Dallas police chief from 79 to 82, they wrote a book together, Joe. It's called Race Tensions and Police. The book offered a blueprint on how law enforcement agencies could prevent and disarm the, quote, racial strains that characterize America and its communities. It was basically a book about how to desegregate, your schools and intermingle and all that. So that's pretty cool, that they actually wrote a book about that in 1962.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Neither did I, sir.
And of course, everyone knows the story of Jesse Curry on November the 22nd, 1963. But if you don't, Jesse Curry was in the lead car of the motorcade that day, right? With Sheriff Bill Decker, I believe, who was it? Forrest Sorrells and somebody else. I can't remember who. I'm sure somebody will fly.
And what?
What?
And what car?
The lead car.
Oh.
The car in front of everybody else.
Oh, I can't.
So they're in the car. They're going through Dealey Plaza, and Jesse Curry, the shooting happens, and Jesse Curry gets on the police radio in the car, the lead car, and he says, "Get a man on top of that triple underpass and see what happened up there." Once Kennedy's death was confirmed, Curry took personal charge of Lyndon Johnson's security, escorting the vice president to Love Field, where U.S. District Judge Sarah T. Hughes swore him in as president. Curry remained on board Air Force One for the brief ceremony, but was anxious to get back to City Hall to see just what in God's name was going on. What in tarnation's going on around here? Because at that point, he had heard that J.D. Tippit had been killed, Oswald had been caught, and all hell's breaking loose. So yeah, very troubling times for Mr. Curry. And fun fact, Joe.
Mm-hmm. I love those.
I learned I was today years old when I learned that Jesse Curry kept John Connolly's blood-covered hat, Stetson hat, in his office on a coat rack to remind him of that day.
Okay, so that's interesting because if he had, say, some regret in how that day went down, was that something to remind him of how he possibly screwed up to make him do better? Or
that's the idea.
Was there like a pride thing in it? Like maybe Connolly was the governor of Texas, right? And maybe, as you pointed out during your long list of his accomplishments, I can guarantee you they probably met a few times before that.
Because I believe when the Secret Service were kind of buttoning up the limousine, I think Connolly left his hat in the car, and they handed it to one of the Dallas police officers there, and they didn't know what to do with it. So they eventually worked his way up to Curry, and he kept it in his office on a coat rack. Crazy.
That's a weird relic, and I wonder if what Gene has it now.
Yeah. Well, also at the 6th floor museum, they have Jesse Curry's chief police badge from 1963. You know, his leather fold out, whip him out bronze badge with his picture ID and everything on there. It's pretty cool.
Wow. Tiny Dancer says hi and had a question.
Why don't you throw it up on the screen, Joe?
I am. Well, first of all, we had was it Buddy Walther in the other person, the follow-up car.
It might have been. I don't know. I think it might have been somebody more important than Buddy Walter, though.
And
there's a lot of swinging dicks in that lead car.
And Tiny Dancer asks, have either of you seen June Oswald in an interview where she recalled federal agents accompanying them throughout their years? This went all the way until their college years. That I have not seen that. That would be very interesting. You know, we've covered on previous episodes how some of the protective custody, some of the surveillance on Marina, and of course, Bill Simpich has wrote on as a lawyer on how the case she probably and her daughters probably still have against the FBI. So I don't know. Federal agents, I don't know what you mean in terms of which agency, but yeah, I could definitely see that being a condition to, you know, appease in a sense, right?
Yeah,
it's not out of the question to me. I have not seen it, but my initial thoughts.
And here is a typical letter that Jesse Curry would receive after the assassination, being chief of police. There was one in particular from Pennsylvania that he kept and framed, and it read, "I wish you all to have the most pathetic life you can find. May your city start sinking in all directions, and may the hate that spread our beloved president's blood on your dirty streets give you all kind of diseases and unhappiness. Go to hell, all of you."
Wow. Well,
brutal.
You're gonna get those type of comments, right?
Oh yeah, but not only that, Joe. Listen to what they did to the man. Shortly after Oswald's death, 3 French journalists broke into Jesse Curry's home and threatened to beat him to death if he didn't tell them everything he knew about the conspiracy to kill the president.
Wait, you said journalists?
Yeah, 3 French journalists broke into Jesse Curry's house and threatened to beat him to death if he didn't tell them everything he knew about the conspiracy to kill the president.
That sounds very journalistic-like.
His son Gene says that he found out where the journalists were staying and took a shotgun, went to their hotel room, and raised hell trying to get them to come outside. He says, "I was a little hot-headed," recalls Gene. "I was too young to have any sense. I was in my 20s. So he was going to shoot him. Shoot him up. Wow. Texas shotgun style. Wow. Take that Frenchie, stick that in your croissant and smoke it. Croissant.
Croissant. Gotta do it every time.
4 months later, Curry was admitted to the hospital for undisclosed tests. It's hinted that the stress of the assassinations and the ensuing investigation had been too much for him to bear. Gene says his father likely entered the hospital because of illness and exhaustion. He had high blood pressure and diabetes. And Jesse Curry's father had died at an early age of 53 from some of the same diseases. But in August of 64, Curry admitted to Jim Ewell of the Morning News that, "I wake up every now and then at 2 and 3 in the morning thinking about Kennedy, Oswald, and Ruby. and I can't go back to sleep. He says, I suppose it will haunt me to my dying day. Brutal, man.
Yeah. You got to think of the people it affected and their lives that were changed forever because of those, few seconds, right? And just where they were during and what position they were holding during that period. And it's I think he was definitely especially if you consider he did go to FBI training school, was the investigation was taken over by the FBI, right? So I guess he felt in some way he couldn't do as much, but I mean that was after
Well, at that point Oswald's dead,
right,
Tippett's dead, Ruby's in custody. I mean, it is what it is at that point.
And one thing I found interesting I wanted to add is as you were listing all of like his different, he was in the traffic division, he went to this school, he went to that school, and like kept rising, right?
Yeah.
A few episodes ago, we talked about J.D. Tippett, who was in the force for 11, 12 years, around that time, and not being promoted. And I think we had a negative comment because we called him a dullard. But that's kind of what we mean in terms of like if you have a couple brain cells, you're going to get promoted over those course of time, over that long of a time. And JD Tippett was in the airborne, right? We had talked about that. So there very well could have been some screws loose, and and maybe that would have been the perfect guy to make the fall, be the fall guy as compared to someone that is a rising star, so to say, right? At least before 63. So
let's move up to So let's move up to February 17th, 1966, when Chief Curry wrote his letter of resignation that he was leaving the force upon the advice of my physician. My doctor informs me that the continued pressures and tensions of the office have caused my blood pressure to be affected, and we can't have that. So I must extend my deep appreciation for my staff and being so loyal and cooperative. In October of 68, he then took a full-time position as head of security for Texas Bank and Trust Company, which he held for another 8 years, which takes us to 1976. Okay. Now, Curry died in 1980. But the period from 75 to 80 is kind of interesting, as you will see coming up here in just a second. So in September of 78, not long after the House of Representatives opened yet another set of hearings about the Kennedy assassination, Jesse Curry was driving near Greenville Avenue and Lover's Lane, Joe, when he suffered a stroke. He suffered a stroke, and he crashed into a fire hydrant and a telephone pole, and his car tumbled and toppled 100 feet away in a parking lot. Damn. That's crucial.
He was going fast.
Yeah, to go 100 feet. I mean, you hit a fire hydrant and a telephone pole, you're getting pinballed around inside that car like a mofo. I mean,
yeah, you're coming to close to a dead stop.
Wow. Man.
Oh, boy.
His friends Fred Hollis and Jim Ewell said that in the years after the assassinations until his death, Curry had begun to drink heavily to excess. Hollis claims, though Ewell says that he masked it pretty well. Gene says that this just isn't true. Sure, his father became melancholy every now and then, but to attribute that to the assassination or age, I don't know. Jesse Curry died less than 2 years after the accident on June 23rd, 1980. And for a man who had been the center of such chaos, his was a peaceful death. So how did Curry die? This is really weird. Okay. The night he died was really strange, Gene recalled. He called over to my house on the phone, and all the kids were there. He talked to me, then my wife, and then my children one by one on the phone. He never did that. Never. He tells his wife, B, after the phone call, that he's going in the bedroom to work on a crossword puzzle. And he laid down on the bed and died. Pretty weird, huh? It's almost like he had a premonition, or like he knew he was going to die. So he called his kid and his grandkids and talked to them, told his wife, hey, I'm going to work on a crossword puzzle, honey. I'll be in the bedroom. And then just donk.
I'm not laughing at that. I was going to make a joke, but I don't know if that many people would get it, but maybe he got a download. But that is, the amount. So he survived that crash.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he survived the crash, lived another 2 years after the stroke and everything else. But, apparently it took a toll on him there in his last 2 years. But for somebody who led such a crazy and chaotic life, for it to come to an end just like that and be instantly peaceful, bam. It was pretty crazy. So 6 months after Curry's death, documents were released revealing that J. Edgar Hoover never forgot Curry's allegations, that the FBI knew about Oswald being in Dallas and did nothing to prevent him from killing Kennedy. So that's what Jesse Curry said on live television. Hoover was pissed. Hoover conducted a vendetta against the Dallas police because of Curry's remarks, disallowing any Dallas police officers from attending the very same FBI training academy that Curry himself had once attended. He wrote a letter to Special Agent Shanklin instructing him to, quote, deal at arm's length with the Dallas Police Department personnel. So,
wow.
Talk to the hand, DPD. Go F yourself, DPD. We're the F freaking BI.
Shanklin is coming up a lot in some of my research, and that is very interesting. Wow.
Yeah. So now I'm gonna read you not all, but there's a BBC interview that I did not know he did in March of 1975. Jesse Curry did with the BBC, right?
British.
The big. I thought BBC stood for something else. Anyway, it was a show called Panorama.
I believe it's for that.
Yeah. We'll hear more about that on Locals later.
Yeah.
So the interviewer says, are you suggesting there is still an attempt by the FBI and CIA to thwart the authorities in trying to find out what actually happened? Curry says, it's difficult to say from which source that these attempts to thwart arise. There is no doubt in my mind that the agencies of the government were it not limited to that, it's broader than them. Sorry, it's very small type. I do not want an investigation to proceed, not necessarily because they are involved in some way with the assassination, but it was certainly suggested to me that there was involvement by people, agencies of government prior and after the assassination in a manner that, if it surfaced, would perhaps show some dereliction of responsibility, some conduct that perhaps might be hard to explain. For example, why was it that, though an alleged conversation that Oswald had in Mexico City, which was on tape, never surfaces? The tape was destroyed, that it lately appeared that the tape was not destroyed until after the assassination of President Kennedy, as those are areas that are very delicate, and it doesn't mean an involvement in the assassination. It may not. But it certainly suggests that something might surface that might be too embarrassing for them, and for these reasons and no other, there were attempts to thwart the investigation. So even Jesse Curry knows about the Oswald on tape incident that Hoover told Johnson about, that the CIA allegedly, taped Oswald down there, and then somehow Hoover gets a hold of the tapes, but he tells Johnson that it wasn't Oswald's voice on the tapes. And then all of a sudden the tapes come up missing. CIA says they destroyed them and taped over them, but that's definitely not the case. So some foolery was definitely going on there, and Curry knew it. The interviewer says, I wonder if we could perhaps talk about the episode of when Oswald purportedly went to Mexico. Can you tell me what you found out, what happened? Well, I think we have to understand its significance first. Or there is some indication that rather than being in Mexico City at a certain time, Oswald may have been in Dallas. And talking then about the assassination of President Kennedy, and also some indication that perhaps he was in the company of a certain CIA agent. That is disputed on the basis that Oswald could not have been there, or he must have been in Mexico City. And part of the claim that he must have been in Mexico City is based on the fact that he allegedly had gone into the Cuban embassy and had called at the Russian embassy, and there was a wiretap which Oswald picked up in that phone conversation, and that became part of the proof, showing Oswald could not have been in Dallas and therefore was in Mexico City. However, the photographs allegedly of Oswald going into the Cuban embassy, as we all know, in fact, were not photographs of Oswald at all. Secondly, it turns out that these photographs, even if they were of the wrong person, you would expect they would be of a person entering the Cuban embassy, but it turns out they're photographs of someone entering the Russian embassy. And the question raises, how could they mix that up so badly when they know what building we're talking about? In addition, when we inquire where were the photographs you took of people who entered the Cuban embassy on the day in question, we are told that the cameras were not working that day. I want to talk to the camera people. I want to find out, is that true? And that's where we got stopped. In addition, and the interviewer interrupts. He says, well, how'd you get stopped? So it's interesting that Curry lets out here that they were investigating whether or not Oswald went to Mexico or he was in Dallas. And they're trying to figure out and talk to the people in the Cuban embassy, and they were stopped. So the interviewer says, how did you get stopped? And Curry says, well, I never got that far. All hell broke loose. And the issues got diverted. We had to defend ourselves in terms of attacks by the Congress and the press to continue the investigation. But in addition, for example, where was the tape conversation itself? Tapes were destroyed. The CIA said that they had reused that tape prior to the assassination of President Kennedy. Yet the FBI has a document stating that some other agents listened to the tape after the assassination of President Kennedy, and the voice on it was not Oswald's. In addition, the CIA presented a transcript of the tape. We had interviewed the typist who typed it up, who said that the transcript presented was not, in fact, what was typed up by whoever it was who spoke on that conversation. These are areas that I wanted to get into, and at the time I did, and started to make it clear that I was going to demand the appearances of witnesses. I was going to get their documents. And that's when the attacks really reached a crescendo in the Congress, and whatever was left just spent really defending ourselves and just trying to get the investigation to continue. Crazy stuff, but it goes on and on for like 10 pages. And I'm not gonna read it all and bore y'all to death, but I think it's interesting that this is in 1975, so this is about the time of the Church Committee. This is pre-HSCA stuff, right? And then let's fast forward a little bit, Joe, to 1978. with Peter Dale Scott. And we're going to hear an interview with Jesse Curry. And it's about 1.5 minutes long. But listen closely.
Curry was in the fatal motorcade just ahead of the president and cannot accept the Warren Commission view that the only shot came from behind.
I think there's a possibility that one could have come from in front of us. We've never been able to prove that. But just in my mind, and by the direction of the blood and brain from the president from one of the shots, it would just seem that it would have to be fired from the front rather than behind. I can't say that I could swear that I believe there was one man and one man alone. I think that there's a possibility that it could have been another man.
Curry was Dallas police chief at the time of the assassination.
Heard the first shot? Approximately right along here.
And you didn't look back at that point?
No, I looked in the rear view mirror.
I see. Now, you've seen the Zapruder film that was taken from up this hill. There's a very distinct head snap where the President Kennedy's head is hit backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't that suggest that the shot would have come from
well, it would appear to be so.
Mm-hmm. And at the same, we also have Dr. Malcolm Perry at Parkland Hospital saying that he examined the wound in the president's throat and it was an entrance wound.
Yes.
Which would also suggest that the shot had come from the front.
I'm not saying that the shot was not fired from here. I'm saying we never found anybody that we could connect with it.
But it does suggest that the evidence that we have, it's in both cases rather strong evidence that there was another assassin involved.
That's right.
And that is the voice of Jesse Curry, pretty much admitting that he's a believer in a conspiracy and more than one shooter to kill JFK that day. And this is a man who not only did he write a book in 1969, like I mentioned before, but he was in the know. I mean, this is the chief of police at the time, and he had been around, police work for 30 some years at this point when he's head of chief of police, and I'm
Been
sure he
around
knew
the FBI.
Yeah, he knows what a homicide looks like. He knows what a victim of a shooting looks like. He knows blood spatter patterns.
Yes.
Direction and where bullets come from. And this is what his analysis from seeing the limo, seeing his officers who were covered in brains and blood riding behind the limo, seeing the Zapruder film. This is his analysis. So I think it's very important to pay attention to what Jesse Curry was trying to tell us. And, he was often ridiculed and, just held accountable and blamed for, all this stuff happening in his city as he is the chief of police. He was not present when Ruby shot Oswald, but Captain Fritz was. And Hoover had sent a memo to Curry, but he never actually got it in time. And the memo was from Hoover stating explicitly to make sure that nothing happens to Oswald while in their custody. And I think that's what pissed off J. Edgar Hoover the most, is that something did happen to Oswald while in custody. But then again, you have the more conspiratorial side that says everyone's better off if this guy does not make it to trial. So that's it, Joe. That's all I got about Chief Curry and his importance in this whole thing, and an often overlooked and empathetic historical figure, Joe.
Yes, definitely. And I did not know a lot of little tidbits and some of those facts you mentioned about Curry. Very interesting. And not, quite sure where I land on him, to be honest.
Just don't land on his face.
Well, obviously, but after some of what you said, so I'm always keeping my mind open. And what was he put in an impossible situation? Was he trying to redeem himself in some type of way later in life? And you actually did the perfect segue, Rob, because you mentioned the church committee. And when did you say he wrote his book in 78?
No, he wrote his book in 69.
69.
Yeah,
right.
my favorite number. Yes, 1969.
Yes. And so I am I'm sorry. Going to talk a little bit about I know the cough button, right?
No, I was pointing at the comment
Oh, Dead Oswald. Good. Yeah.
by the optoeconomist. That's a
Well,
financial eye doctor, which you may
then
need
why
to see
was
after this
Hoover?
show.
Why was Hoover so upset, or was he pretending to be upset? Is the follow-up question there?
Well, I think Hoover wanted to be able to blame the Dallas police for any flubbings that were going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And he was already pissed at Curry for opening his mouth saying that the FBI didn't let him know about Oswald. So it was a shit show all around. Yeah. Basically.
So when you have books like Curry coming out, this is the perfect segue. You set me up perfectly for it, even though you might not even have known it, Rob. When books are coming out like that, like Curry's, when you're having the church committee, when you're having the HSCA, what do you think? And you're having all these negative articles about the overreaches of the ABCs, the intelligence community, in all the newspapers. What do you think you're going to do if you were, say, involved?
Well, by the time Curry started opening his mouth and talking, Hoover was dead. The intelligence agencies are getting roasted over the coals for their bull crap they were pulling. The FBI and COINTELPRO had been exposed and all the dirty tricks that they were doing.
The CIA specifically, who were bearing the brunt of a lot of these.
Oh yeah, for sure. But both entities that roasted Curry got their comeuppance eventually.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a local yokel. Chief of police couldn't keep a damn prisoner alive. I mean, come on now.
I was gonna let you keep going.
That's all right.
So what the CIA does is they, of course, form a propaganda operation, a psyop, not of the nuclear origins, and you call on one of your best propagandists, and that is someone by the name of David Atlee Phillips, the Night Watch, 25 years of peculiar service. And I have just started. I know there's one. He uses so many big words. I actually had to look up for this.
What's the name of the book again, Joe?
Peculiar.
What is it?
Stop. Peculiar. I'm tongue-tied and you're just fucking with me. So, anyways, so this is actually a first edition copy. It came out in 1977. So you're thinking, right, after the church committee, as the HSCA is, kind of ramping up and getting started. And one of the greatest propagandists that the CIA had was David Atlee Phillips, major suspect to many in the JFK assassination. And he wrote this book in 1970.
Major red herring to many.
Yes. And before he wrote this book, actually, how I got started on this was because I had this book just on my bookshelf and I had never gotten the chance to read it, right? Because I know it's fictional, right? Fictional. But the best storytellers always have some threads of truth in the stories.
Yes, I believe I called it in the description, Joe. Veiled hyperbole.
Yes.
Yes.
And David Atlee Phillips was one of the best. And not only did he write this book, he created the Association of Former Intelligence Officers, nonprofit foundation, alumni association of intelligence officers from all services in it was 1975, right? So that's right around kind of church committee territory.
And Joe, little known fact about that association
Yes.
is they would provide funds for lawyers to those former intelligence officers who got sued for various things.
Wow. You're just killing it on the segues, because guess what happened? And I can actually, I'll step back a second. The reason I picked up this book was because we had a question when we were discussing the Tresconia prison in Cuba a few episodes ago of when did Atlee Phillips cover get blown and have to leave Cuba. And that was in 1960, actually. And that kind of started me down just to find the answer for that question, because I didn't have it at the time. And then I started reading this, and it is first of all, the foreword is written by William E. Colby. And for 2.5 decades, David Atlee Phillips stood the night watch as an agent in the arcane profession of espionage. As a CIA officer, he rose to become director of the Western Hemisphere Division, a post he occupied at the time the Allende government was overthrown in Chile. He was also involved in Guatemala and with Morales as well, and was also in World War II. Was a bombardier, was shot down and imprisoned in a POW camp. And what did he do? He escaped, which was kind of gangster. And then bought a newspaper in Chile. Interesting. And essentially, the preface ends with him talking about all the sometimes humorous, always fascinating implications and stories, but they don't understand the company, and it really kind of is a credible argument of the CIA's business may not be particularly pretty, but it's necessary type of propaganda. And I think post church committee around the HSCA, that makes a lot of sense. And this is what I was going to get to. In let me see.
Real quick, Joe, while you look for that.
Yep.
Roger, our music producer, added a book. Any of you guys have it? Yeah, Roger, you might have missed it at the beginning of the show. We have it up at our secret book depository. Yeah, Joe, he's talking about Curry, not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was looking.
But you're the music producer here at the Lynn Goodman Podcast, so I'll email you later, bud. I got it. I got you, homie. He had a garage full when he died. Sounds like Jim DiEugenio. And his garage full of books. But pray continue.
I will. And so I was just laughing at your comment in my head.
Well, yeah, because every time I hear that name.
What's your name? What name?
Huh? This one.
John D'Angelo.
Oh, that guy. Got it.
That guy, yeah.
Sorry.
His garage full of books.
Yes.
Yes.
So there was a 1980 book called Death in Washington, authored by Donald Freed and Fred Landis, charged the CIA was involved in the 1973 Chilean coup d'etat and the 76 assassination of Orlando Letelier, something like that. And the author specifically named Phillips as being involved in a cover-up of the assassination and reiterated Fonzie's claim that Phillips served as Oswald's case officer using the alias Maurice Bishop. So what did David Atlee Phillips decide to do? Well, he decided to file a lawsuit of $280 million against the authors and drug out the lawsuit from 82 to 86. You have to think the intention there was to, get them to spend all their money on lawyers' fees, right? Because to your point, you just made probably 5-10 minutes ago, Rob, who was funding a bunch of these type of law firms, which his was represented by NDC, the
organization that he created, his nonprofit.
One of them.
Pay your dues as a former intelligence officer, so we can hopefully sue and get $280 million and make the fund even bigger.
Yeah. And also, famously, the E. Howard Hunt deathbed confession also named David Atlee Phillips as well, and they were made to redact and take that part out. So he has a lot of sway and 280 million. I mean, and this is in the 80s. You know what I mean?
Who's hoping to get a decent settlement?
They did settle, but you have to admit, after 4 years, they're probably broke at that point. They're probably broken mentally. Like, we're not. I don't know. I don't know if the book was published or if they actually made that, or if they had to redact it. I'm not sure, but point is, they had a lot of money behind them to discredit any claims, and this goes around your time period of the Church Committee and the HSCA, and when some Mr. Curry was making some of his claims, right, towards the end of his life. Hunt
did the same thing with the funding against the Spotlight for them claiming he was in Dallas on November 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
So Hunt sued them using the retired intelligence officers fund. So yeah,
and they apparently Hunt's sons weren't the, let's say, cleanest of fellows. That's just what I read, but so I'm going to go through this book because there are some very interesting things. Like I noticed he refers to a lot of people by their pseudonyms and cryptonyms, and he even gives E. Howard Hunt credit for calling him the Knight, which was a very epic pseudonym in the CIA that was used by a former officer in his book, and he was very appreciative to Hunt for doing that. So it's very interesting, and like I said before, in the propaganda that is mostly this book, there are some shreds of truth, I think, in it. I have not read all of it yet, but I am going to read it and will report back if I can find anything.
Cool deal. Yeah, I think there's lots have been said about Phillips and Vesiana, and that's all been proven by John Newman to be horse shit. So there's been also been allegations from like Wynn Johnson about seeing Phillips meet with Oswald in Dallas, and the only other corroborating witness is Judy Baker, which is not a very good corroborating witness.
Oh, no.
So yeah, there's lots of problems with how big of a spook or how much involvement Phillips had in the Kennedy assassination. But I've heard a little bit about this book. And he does make some veiled hyperbole in the book. And I believe he also made a deathbed call to his brother and supposedly confessed some things as well. Mm-hmm. But very interesting stuff, Joe, for sure.
Yeah, it's just one of those books, that you want to get on to reading and you wish you could. It's pretty thick, and
that's what she said.
Yeah, true. Doing a lot of research, and it's tough to get to, but I think it could be a fun project to kind of go. He has a Chile chapter, a Guatemala chapter, a Cuba chapter, a DC chapter,
taco chapter,
a taco chapter. Yes, there was a really good one outside of Building K, which he mentions a few times, which for the people paying attention at home might mean something to us. And it is interesting, and just kind of wanted to touch on that kind of cool little continuation of things that were going around in that time frame from Rob and mine's topics.
Yeah, an asteroid that was not Hunt's son; it was Hemming's son, and Edwin Kaiser's son Scott arguing and throwing insults. That was quite the show. I'm just so flummoxed and perplexed sitting in the middle of these two guys just going after each other's throats. I just kind of sit back and let them have at it. You know what I mean?
Just like a WWE ref.
It was a complete and utter shit show. That for sure. I have no idea what was said. I don't remember learning anything from it other than never to have those two guys on the show at the same time ever again. But yeah, it was fun times for sure. But
that was a funny episode. I do remember that.
Golly day. Hey Joe, here's a shit. Here is a comment you may have missed, sir, from...
Sure.
If I can go back up here.
By Tiny Dancer.
The lovely Tiny Dancer.
Yes.
Interesting that Ruth Payne feels the need for a private line. She makes it convenient for the FBI to install one of those WHCA and FP lines. And what she's referring to is the fact that Ruth Payne, in her 6th floor museum interview, stated at the time of JFK's death She had a party line that she shared with 4 other people, and she had a private line installed not to inconvenience the others. So, man, she sounds more and more like a swinger every day. A party line. Why would you share a phone with 4 or 5 other people? That's weird. So, like, you could be talking to somebody, and any one of those other 4 or 5 people that have access to that phone line can just pick up and listen at any time because they want to. Hey, Ruth, can you get off the damn phone? You've been on like 20 minutes. I need to call my mom.
That I am old enough to remember that happening. So, but yeah, I mean, a private line would be similar to a type of Wanda
3 years
situation.
old, folks. He just looks really goddamn good. Yes.
Thank you, Rob. First compliment you give me in 15 shows or something.
Well, for 83, you do, man. You look really good for 83.
Oh,
I will tell you that.
I talked too soon. But here, why don't we end it, Rob, and try our little experiment here?
Yes, folks, we've got something special for you. We're going to try it tonight. Head over to the link that is in the description of this show. Give us a little bit. Give us like, what time is it? It's 8:21. We're going to shoot for 8, or just turned 8:22. So we're going to shoot for 8:30 over on our locals page. Just follow the link that's in the description. You don't have to be a paid supporter to come watch it. If you want to come hang out with us and hear us go ham on some folks, feel free to join us. Thank you again to everybody that has showed up tonight and participated in the chat, and for the super stickers and super chats. We really appreciate it. And we got something special for you next week for sure. It's going to be we're not going to be live next week. We are going to be recorded, but it's for a good reason, I promise. And but we're going to put it out next week. So be looking for that. You're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be crazy. And yeah, that's right, Roger. I am chugging. God damn, I need glasses. Chugging a big ass bottle of water tonight. I am. It is a big ass bottle of seltzer, raspberry, lime flavored seltzer water. Because I'm bougie like that.
Well, thank you again, everyone. And we hope to see you over there a little in locals in a few minutes. And we will talk to you soon.
That's right, folks. Like I said, give us about 5 minutes or so. And we will see you over on locals, maybe, if we can get it to work. We're really going to try.
Yes.
Just bear with us. All right, folks. Till next time, or see you on locals in a little bit. Peace. 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 Pop. This music's horrible. Roger, we need an outro. All right, y'all. Peace.
Yes, Roger. Peace.